Hi everyone, Nas here from Info.Tech.Journal. So we're going to continue along in our journey in terms of getting Java, PowerShell, and effectively as a bonus, producing some sort of Excel sheet with macros in it, but that's the bonus. So in this particular video, we're going to focus on how we actually to get Java to run PowerShell scripts or Java to open a new application. That is the bridge that we want to go and actually link the two together. So we have Java. And in our previous videos, we've already worked with PowerShell. We have some sort of working script that we want to bridge between these two. So we want to bridge between them. So how do we get to bridge PowerShell in Java? That is the question that we want to ask ourselves, because that is the main point of this video series, how to get them to work together. So in Java, we're going to focus on a few things. What are we going to specifically focus on? We know that Java, okay, if you don't know, you know now, Java has this runtime class. Okay, runtime class. I'll explain to be a little bit later what specific nuances or information that we need to know about runtime class. And then we also know there's a process class. These two things, or these two elements, are the ones we need to focus to actually get Java to execute our PowerShell commands. After we've done that, we need to do a few other things as well. How do we actually get the necessary output, okay, when we run a PowerShell script, and how do we get that and bring those outputs themselves, right? Bring this output themselves and bring it to Java, and then Java to show us how those outputs are presented, or say get those outputs to be presented in Java. So PowerShell, we make Java run PowerShell. PowerShell then produces an output that then we want to give Java so that it can actually show us that output in a screen. So that is our next step. So in order for us to get this output here, we need to somehow read the information presented. So how do we read the information presented? We need to use the reader abstract class, but not directly with the reader abstract class. We will use the BufferdReader. How do we get there? How do we actually get to this point? That is going to be one of the objectives also for this video. Now, this video is one of the key videos in bridging between PowerShell and Java. So let's get into it. Let's open our IDE, or my IDE for that matter. So my IDE I'm currently using is NetBeans as my IDE. As a quick refresher, what was the discussion previously, we'll just run this and it opens a graphical user interface. The graphical user interface for this particular project, I'm using Java Swing, because Java Swing is easier to actually effectively make a jar file at the end of this video series, so we can seamlessly run it. The graphical user interface again is the additional, I would say, finishing touch for our project to make it more presentable. And the engine behind it is actually the one we're going to discuss, is the get runtime and also process. So here we continue. As I said before, we have this environment, this application, and get process here, this button actually runs a process. Okay, the process then calls PowerShell to execute get process, and then from there it will show us or give us or present to us the output. This is the end goal. in order for us to get there, we have to do it step at a time, one step at a time. So that is what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna open a project. So let's open a project. And a Java and the project I'm gonna just say here execution. Just for a name. Or execute. Yeah, execute. Okay. Let's say already exists. Let's say execute commands. Execute commands. Okay, let's finish. Okay, the things I mentioned just now, that we need to understand the runtime class and as well as the process class. Let's go first and dig in what does the actual documentation say about these two classes. So I've done a simple search. Okay, I am not using Google, I'm using Bing for this one. It's just there. So I search Java runtime class and I opened it on Oracle if you just need to search it, and it is actually, let's see, docs Oracle for this particular one. So if you want to understand runtime, public class runtime belongs to this Java language package, the Java language package, and every Java application has a single instance of runtime class that allows the application to interface with the environment in which the application is running. So this is how we interface with our environment, like our Windows environment per se. And here is the main key takeaway. The current runtime, okay, when you run your application, can be obtained with the getRuntime method. Can be obtained with the getRuntime method. So if you were like me initially, this is what I did. This is what I did. And let's go back to our IDE. Okay. I would then say, okay, since it's Java language package, and my reference variable name would be my runtime equals new runtime. Make a new object in Java. Okay, this is how you make a new object in Java. But then you see there's a red line there because I said runtime. Oh, hey, runtime. It's actually runtime. So if you want to check what the error is, let's see what it is. Okay, it says it's just giving me an example. I do it here. I would think that the red line would disappear, but there's still a red line. Then I go here again. It says runtime. If you see this capital in the same, it's saying that the constructor for this class is private. I said, well, why is the constructor private? I just right click if you don't know. It may be dependent on your IDE, but you can right click and you can say go to source. Okay, sorry. Right click, navigate, go to source. Okay, and you see here that my constructor is actually private. This took me a while initially because when you're starting out with Java, it's always like, oh yeah, let's make a new object, let's instantiate new object, let's just create a new object. It's always that when you're just starting out. But then after taking a class on design pattern, this actually made more sense. When I looked at this, you already have an instance of the class, which it says runtime, current runtime, new runtime. This is okay. This is exactly what we did here, right? But it doesn't work because our constructor is private. We can only get or access that instance if we call get runtime. Okay, so this is the way the code is structured in this class. If you're interested to just quick sidetrack on the Singleton package, the Singleton pattern. Okay, Singleton pattern. Okay, spelled wrong. Singleton. You can use any search you want. You can just find this one, the Singleton pattern. This is the most important part we want to look at. The pattern involves a single class in which is responsible to create an object while making sure that only a single object gets created. What does that mean? That means when we have a process, there can only be a single instance of that process for our running application, unless you do some other things or unless you spawn a different process. But if you want to get the current process, there can only be one of them at a time. So this is what we want to look at. This simple pattern. When you look at this, okay, the simple pattern says the singleton pattern demo. Okay, this is what we're trying to do. Well, this is the singleton object, or in our case, this is actually, if we look back at our class, this says public class runtime. So that means it is runtime for a private instance of that class. So if you look back, the private instance of that class. So this is the private instance of that class, runtime, current runtime. Rather than saying get instance, okay, rather than saying get instance, returning a single object, okay, that is actually here get runtime. So now we understand that we can't actually make or instantiate a new class. So what do we have to do? So don't panic if this doesn't work, right? Rather than creating a new one, we just ask for it. Hey, runtime class, can you give me the current instance of that object? So let's just change here. We're still gonna say runtime, my runtime, runtime. Sometimes it's if you're new to this, it can be quite difficult to talk and type at the same time. So rather than saying new, say runtime. And then we're not gonna access the constructor. We're gonna say using the dot operator to get the methods. And then here you say get runtime. Now we know that runtime, my runtime equals runtime get runtime. So this actually gives you the instance of the object, and this is our variable name or our reference to that object. Okay, from there, we need to do another thing. Let's look back at our documentation. And let's go back here. Close this. Close this. We've already gotten the current instance, okay? And obtain it using get runtime. We've obtained it using get runtime. Now, we want to get the process to run. So you have exec here. Exec. Method, okay? It returns a process, and the method name is exec, which utilizes or takes in a string as the parameter for the command, executes the specified string command in a separate process. Okay, so now we've already gotten process. We want to now execute the exec. So there's a few ways to do this. The most would be, so you're not confused, we will say process. You say, why are you actually creating a process? And why are you creating a process? Because I know that once we execute that, it'll return a process. So because we looked at the documentation here, let's go exec, returns a new process. So we need a placeholder, okay, in our class when it actually returns the process. So I'm going to say process, again, my process. Okay, process, my process. And then this is my reference to that particular instance of the runtime process, of the current runtime. Say runtime. Runtime. And then I'm going to use the dot operator, and I'm going to use exec. Okay. my runtime, sorry, my runtime. Okay, exec. And you see here, we have a few things. If you notice here, the method exec is overloaded. What does it mean by overloaded? It's the same name, but it has a lot of parameter options that you can pass to it. So we're going to use the first one, that's the simplest one. And I'm going to pass it a string. I'm going to pass it a string. For our example here, we're just going to open Notepad.exe as a trial before we actually start executing Java to execute PowerShell commands. So I'm going to say quotation mark, remember, because it requires it to be a string, and I say Notepad.exe, and I'll close it. Now, hover on it, unreported exception, IO exception, must be caught or declared to be thrown. Okay, hopefully you can see that. That's what it's saying. So, because if you look back at the documentation, okay, public process exec, okay, throws an IO exception. So you need to handle that. Okay, so if you're block. Okay. So now, if it's right here, we actually use a try catch block. Let's make sure the formatting is okay. Try. This is what we want to try. Okay. If anything happens, we're gonna catch the IO exception, and we're just using a logger get logger. So it just tells us the log severity and such. You can actually change the message if you want. Maybe we can say SOUT ex dot get clause, get message if you want, but that's a totally separate video. That's on exception handling. So for now, we're just gonna use the defaults that's given. So this is my process. It's gonna open Notepad.exe. So while I run this, let's execute. So I'm gonna run. If you can run here, run execute command, or I'm just gonna press F6. And as you can see, it opens Notepad. It opens Notepad. So let's say you're a little bit skeptical, like me. You want to make sure that this actually does what it does and actually opens it, and it's not just retrieving something or it's just on the background. So how do you do it? We can go back to PowerShell. Open PowerShell. Okay. Let's minimize this a bit, and let's move that, and this is PowerShell. Right. I don't have Notepad anywhere. And how do you verify that there's no Notepad? So I'm going to say get process. Okay. Name. Note. Okay. Okay, I have Notepad++. That's a separate application I'm using for my notes, but it is not the same as this Notepad right here. Okay. So let's just be more specific. We're gonna throw away. See, if we just say Notepad specifically, but not Notepad++, you know that was wildcard. Hopefully you've viewed the previous videos to have a better understanding of this, or not. You're just viewing this purely for the Java section. Just a quick explanation. When I say get process, the name of the process, this Notepad++, because it's surrounded by wildcards, it says anything in the front is valid, anything in the back is valid, as long as it has the word Notepad. So I'm actually using Notepad++ as my notes for this video. But what we're doing here is we actually want Java to actually run and open Notepad, which is actually the Notepad from Microsoft. So here it's saying get process, cannot find the process name Notepad. Okay, we're gonna run this again, and it opens Notepad. This is a new instance of Notepad. I didn't do anything else. You can see visibly here. So if I say again that command Notepad, you see here there's now a Notepad process. So if you run the previous command with the wildcard and you say enter, there's now two ones that fit the search parameter for name. There's Notepad and Notepad++. So you know now that our Java application has successfully opened a Notepad. So you're gonna ask, okay, is there a way to make sure that the process is running without having to open an external window or an external PowerShell to verify that the process is open? So let's go back to this. Scroll all the way to the top. And doesn't seem like there's one that's saying that, oh, how is that particular one to know that the process is alive and kicking? So we're going here. Let's go back to our Java language. Let's go to process. So because it is passing as a process, if it's not there, you can just look directly at process. So while we're here, let's just take a quick look at process. Public abstract class process, okay, of course it's going to extend object because object is the main one, the top of the top, le creme de la creme for Java. Everything goes back to object. Okay, the process builder start, oh, it says it uses process builder start, and runtime exec methods create a native process and returns an instance of the subclass of process. Okay, the class process provide methods to perform inputs. Oh, perform inputs. This is a key one. From process, performing outputs to the process. So now we have better understanding. Okay, input, output. Didn't we want to get the output from the process? Oh, okay. That's interesting. So this is just a process that I use to get my class to run and execute the process. All standard IO, standard in, standard out, standard operations may be directed to parent class. Oh, that's interesting as well. And then look at here. Access via stream. Oh, that's a stream. Remember when I said that we're gonna be working with BufferdReader? And BufferdReader, we will pass it some sort of stream. So most probably we will be using an input stream. Okay, we'll talk about it a bit later as well. So our main goal here was to find how if we can actually check if the process ran and open without us opening PowerShell. So let's look at here. Oh, there's process input output in. Oh, these are the methods that we are looking at. Okay, exit value destroy. Oh, wait for error it returns. Okay. In this particular one, there doesn't seem to be a specific one. So let's go back to our initial one. Okay. Depending on the documentation, if you're not sure it's not here, you can also do this. Let's go back to our IDE. So I'm going to say process. So here, navigate, I'm going to go to source. And you can actually look at here as well. So we have, again, the same output, input stream, wait for. Okay, wait for. We're going to look at it as well. It's going to wait. And once it's done, it's going to tell us that it's done. Okay, remember that if it's returns 0, okay, look at this. Not remaining, it is 0 and returns false. Okay. Exit, destroy forcibly. Okay, you can destroy. This is the one I'm looking at. Public boolean is alive. Has not exited. That means if you look at has exited, that means the application has exited. So there is test whether the process represented by code is alive. Oh, that's the one I've been looking for. Oh, okay. So there's two ways for us to look at it. You can look at the documentation. You can look at the source itself. It's up to your preference. But now I found that, oh, there's a method that says is the thing alive. So let's try it out. Rather than having it to open a PowerShell instance to check the process. So how do we do that? So we see here, it says here process, okay, returns has exited, basically has exited is here. There's another method, returns true or false. So let's go back here. I'm gonna say SOT. Okay. Did the for example. And I'm gonna, what's my process? My process is my process. Okay, what do you want to get? I want to get is alive as a boolean, and that's a met, so we have to close it with the brackets. So for this one, if you're not familiar with it, you can actually the boolean will turn into a string. Okay, when you run it. So we're gonna open this, and please look at my output for my command. Run. Okay, it opens. Let's say you can't see it in the background. It just opens, and you say here, did the notepad open? True. That means the notepad did open. The notepad did open. Now you're saying that we've done this. We know that notepad open, and there's a way to check if the process is alive. Okay, without opening another PowerShell instance to check if the thing is running. Now let's go back here, and then let's just change this. We know that this is the string that takes in the command to be passed to the exec for it to execute the command set. Okay, so let's just change it to PowerShell. Okay, we're going to say PowerShell exe, and then this is how we're going to do it. We're going to just say the simple one, get process. Get process. So you know this one works because we actually run PowerShell and get process, and this is how we check if the thing is alive. So rather than saying here, did the notepad open, we just say did the ps execute, did the ps run, and run process is alive. So we're gonna do that, and we're gonna run it again. It says here, did the ps run, and it says it's true, but did you see anything? We didn't see anything, right? We didn't see anything because remember, this one runs the command in the background different from our notepad. The notepad actually opens an application. Okay, the notepad actually opens an application, so it gives us a physical, a more physical feedback, a more visual feedback. But for this one, it doesn't. So if you remember that when we looked at process, there's input stream, right? Output stream. Okay, this is actually get error stream, get input stream. If you notice, so this gets the input stream connected to the normal output. This is what, remember, this was what I thought to be a bit confusing initially, because this one says returns output stream connected to the normal input. The normal input. This one returns the input stream connected to the normal output. So you have, rather than getting the output, like, oh, let's get the output stream, it's actually, we want to get the input stream of that particular process. So you think it might just be just that simple. So we're going to say here, we know the process is alive. And then let's just say we're going to get the input stream. So I'm going to say the process again, my process. I'm going to say get input stream. And we're going to run it again. When you see here, did the PS run? Yes, I'm making it a bit bigger. True. But then you see here, Java IO buffered input stream, and then yada yada yada. If you've seen this before, let's say you've done arrays and you just want to print an array, and then you forgot or you didn't implement a proper toString, or maybe an array list and then there's no toString. You get this jumbled up at the end. This is usually the reference to the pointer where it is actually. So it's not actually giving you a proper stream, but it does give us a better idea that buffered input stream. So that means, oh, I need to do something with the buffered input stream. Okay, we need to make sure that we can actually process that information. If you remember when I mentioned just now that we're going to use the BufferdReader, the BufferdReader contains the methods for reading data from the stream. And then if the buffer reader, we need to pass it a reader. So let's just have a quick draw on the whiteboard. Let's go back to the whiteboard. Okay, let's go back to the whiteboard. Okay, if you have any experience with reading in a file, okay, like a file reader, you probably used the buffer reader before. So in buffer reader, buffer reader, it's actually the main one is the reader, which is an abstract. Okay, and underneath it you have buffer reader, okay, which implements the abstract input stream reader as well. This is also a reader, okay, and under input stream reader, there's file reader. Usually in any Java class, you will probably work with file reader before, but then with this, it doesn't actually have to be that you actually use this to just read files. It actually can use this to read the characters that you're giving it to it, or a stream of data. Okay, so we're not gonna use file reader, right? We're not gonna use file reader. We know now that process, okay, this is process, the process class has a method, okay, get input stream, okay, which then this returns us a stream, or as you can see here, buffered input stream. Okay, buffered input stream. We have to use these classes to actually get us a proper stream or a proper string for us to display the information. So let's see what we need to do in addition to get that output from PowerShell into Java. Okay. Let's go back to our IDE. Okay, we're now back in our IDE. So there's two things here. You can choose to just use a regular string, but for this instance, let's just try using a string builder. So you're gonna use a string builder. Okay, this is an input stream. I'm gonna comment that out because we don't need it anymore. Okay, it's alive. It's alive. Okay, so let's use string builder. If you don't know what string builder is, basically it just builds a string. String builder. Let's say output equals new. Okay, new string builder. Okay, now we have an output. Okay, now we have an output. So how do we read that string reader? How do you get that string builder to hold this information, the proper stream? We don't want a reference. We don't want just a reference. We want to actually see the string itself. Okay, so we have to make a new instance of BufferdReader. Okay, if it's not there, there's two ways to do it. I usually just say BufferdReader, and then go here, and it says import Java IO BufferdReader. Okay, Java IO BufferdReader, and it'll input it. So now we have import that Java IO BufferdReader. So I'm gonna say BufferdReader and say reader. Okay, and then we're gonna choose new BufferdReader. Okay, if you look at BufferdReader just now, okay, BufferdReader takes in a reader. So the common practice would be we just say new, okay, because it takes in a reader. Okay, so we say new here, input stream reader. So input stream reader. Okay, this is what we want. Okay, when we looked at this, just now. Input stream reader, abstract input stream. So yeah, input stream reader. Okay, input stream reader, get input stream, returns an input stream. We click here. Oh, I'm gonna say new tab. Okay, input stream. Okay, new input stream. So public abstract class input stream extends object, implements closable. So you don't have to worry about closable, because that means it implements a close function. Okay, so you see here, this is the input stream and this is the constructor itself. Okay, and if you say buffer input stream, you say buffer input stream. Buffer input stream. Okay, there's a bit more information here. Buffer input stream. Okay, if you see, it says input stream, but we're actually interested in BufferdReader. So let's go back to here. Okay, let's just it's easier to just Google it. Java BufferdReader. So let's go back here. Let's go here. The one I'm interested in is looking at the constructor. So this is the constructor that we want to look at. BufferdReader takes in a reader. Okay, so a reader, and then if you look at input stream reader, it is a reader class, or it extends the reader class, so we can actually use it. Okay, so if you are not following along, basically I need to pass it a reader. Okay, need to pass it a reader, and input stream reader, directly known subclasses. Input stream reader is also a reader. Okay, so that's why I'm doing it here. I'm saying I'm gonna make a reader, okay, which is a type BufferdReader, a new class of it, an instantiate a new object of BufferdReader. The new object of BufferdReader, the constructor, takes in a reader, so I'm gonna pass it an input stream reader. An input stream reader, if you look at it, will then take in an input stream. So what is the input stream that we were gonna use? We're gonna pass it my process get input stream, and we're gonna close it here, and let's just see if it's sufficient. What's that? So what do I do? I'll say SGT. I want to say reader. What do you think? Is it gonna be sufficient? No, it's not gonna be sufficient, because we need to read the line in that particular reader. It's still giving a reference now. So we're gonna exit. Access to. What do we mean? Remember, when we do it, we need to make sure we're reading it. If not, it is just another buffered reader. Okay, rather than getting the initial one that says BufferdReader, this is now a different BufferdReader. Okay, but now we have this variable that holds this object that we created. So now we just make sure that we have something to hold the string line, because we're gonna read it each line. Yes, right. We're gonna read each line. If you've done file reading before, is quite similar. It's quite similar. So I'm gonna say while, okay, line equals reader. Okay, because reader, and in reader we have read line. And what does read line do? Read line throws IO exception. Okay, again we know that it will throw an IO exception. Reads a line of text. A line is considered to be terminated by any one of the line feed or carriage return and so forth. So it actually reads a line. So we're gonna say reader read line. Okay, and while this particular read line, the end of the line would be null, so does not equal null. What do you want to do with it? We have this string builder output. We want to append that output. We want to append. We want to add to it. So we're going to say output. Okay, and we're going to say append. Okay, what is the sequence? We're going to say line. And how do we separate each line? We're going to concatenate it with a new line. And that's how we get the input at the output from our get process. So let's go here. Line equals reader dot read line. We're gonna read each line. Okay, we just don't want to just give us a buffer stream. Blah, this is the buffer stream, and we just get a reference. We want to actually read the line itself. Okay, and then this is what we're doing right now. Okay, we're gonna read the line. Everything's there, done there. So next step. Okay, then I showed you just now that sometimes it would just take a while. So let's just say we're doing this. We're gonna say personal. Okay, it's gonna take a while, right? You see that just now? So if I were to say SOUT here, okay, and I'm gonna say my output, okay, and I'm gonna run it again. You see here, it just hangs there for a bit, runs, right? Especially if it's a hefty command. My computer is not running a lot of processes. It still runs a lot in general, but then it's not running like a server or something else. That will take a bit longer. Or if your PowerShell script takes just that bit longer, you want to make sure that you see a success or some feedback telling you that, oh yeah, it ran, rather than just waiting there. Also, you want to look at, let's say this part, we know that it ran. So let's say this command is wrong. We say it's, rather than saying get process, we say ge process, and it's wrong, and we run it again. If you notice, this time it just ran. It says it ran true, but nothing is shown. So this might confuse you as well if there's no feedback, or how do you know that the process actually ran successfully and what kind of output or something bad happened to it. So that's why we need to figure out how to know that if this thing actually, the command actually ran successfully. So if you remember last time, previously, we said that in process, we have something that says wait for, and wait for would return as an int value. Okay, for this particular instance, if we look at all the code, it might be a little bit too much. So right now, let's go back to our Java process. And if you notice here, we have wait for, and this is the most important part. For wait for, we know that it returns an int, an integer, but returns here the exit value for the subprocess represented by the process object. By convention, the value 0 indicates normal termination. So if it's not 0, that means something happened to the execution, that it terminated abnormally, or something wrong happened to it. So let's add some verification in our code just to give us some peace of mind that it actually ran successfully. So let's go back to execute command class here, and then from there we want to do a few things. We want to make sure that we can take that value from the process wait for. Okay, so here there's two ways to do it. You can do if like this, and it's my process because I'm using my process. So my process, okay, and we want to get wait for, okay, wait for, okay, and the value for this should equal to 0 for a proper termination. What I mean by proper termination, as we mentioned just now with our method here, returns 0 indicates normal termination. That means everything ran properly. So here it says here there's something wrong. Okay, double operator, okay, it doesn't like that, so found it like that. Now we get something else. It says here, because remember wait for, okay, wait for actually throws an interrupted exception. So let's copy this exception, copy the name, and let's just add a catch here. Catch the exception itself, ex is the name, and we're gonna say here just show us ex.getMessage. And that's it. Let's see here again. Says here invert. It doesn't like this way to do it. Okay. No, because I'm saying wait, not wait actually. Wait for. Okay, because wait, if you look at wait would refer something else. Okay, now let's go here. Let's see if there's wait. No, let's go back to our process. And if let's say if we want just to find wait. Okay, let's scroll. Pretty sure it's gonna be okay. Let's just do this. Wait. Oops. Basically, just now wait. If I were to do this, okay. Let's just wait. Wait. Void type not allowed here. So this actually returns a void, not the one we want. So if you want wait for, that's why it was giving us that error, because we can't do a comparison because it's saying it's returning a void and you want to compare it with this equals to operator and 0. That's the problem itself. So you can look at the documentation or you can just seek the help directly from here. So we know that this works. Now we do a comparison, but some people don't like to do it this way. Some people like to do it like this. So int, we're gonna say int exit value, and then we're gonna assign it this particular call, and we go exit value here. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Okay, some people like to do it the first one, some people like to do this method. It is up to your preference, but just make sure that you're understanding what you're doing. So now we've done this, we're gonna say here, we say SOUT. Yeah, I'm gonna make it in the bottom. And we'll say success. Okay, so we know that it successfully ran. And just to be sure as well, okay, just to note that the indentation was not proper just now. So if you're ever wanting to do an indentation, let's say this is something wrong like that, and in this particular one, I want to actually close the process or exit it properly. So I'm going to say system dot exit. Okay, I'm not going to send an int value exit for it because I'm going to send it again. The int value for exit val would be 0. So I'm going to say set it 0 here to properly exit. And you notice that just now I highlighted everything. And then if you're using NetBeans, you can just highlight everything and say Control Alt F to make sure everything is indented properly. Okay, if you want to know the shortcut. So for this one, now we've done this. We've said in terms of exit val, my process wait for will return 0 if everything is proper and terminated successfully and there's no anomalies. So we go here, we'll then print out the output, we say success, and then we will then exit it. But if something else, something were to go wrong, let's just say SOT here, and you say something bad happened. Okay, something bad happened. Okay, so now we've done this simple verification just to make sure that if something does go wrong, it'll tell us. If everything is okay, we'll get the output and say success. So if I've corrected just now, we say here GE process. Just now we've noticed that GE process didn't return anything, but this line said, where's the line? Here is alive because it was alive. It did try to do it. Okay, because get process did open, but then when get process open, this says it's true because it did open. But then this part was wrong. We did not get any output from it. So when we saw here, it just says, did the process run? It says true and then just blank. It's like, ugh, no feedback, not really helpful. So in addition to that, we did this. We looked at my process, wait for. Again, wait for will give us a value of 0 and with successful, okay, or normal termination. And there we can just say print output, the output itself, we say success, and we want to make sure that we exit the system properly. And here we say system out print line if something bad does happen. So this is still wrong. So let's hope to see that it will say something bad happened. Okay, now this gives you a bit of feedback that you can use to better rectify or address any faults in your programming. So let's change here to get process properly. Okay, and let's just say now I want the process to be let's say name, let's say Notepad, because I still have my Notepad++ running, so I'm just gonna say Notepad like that. And let's run this. Run, did the process run? It's true. And you see I have Notepad++, and it says successful. So that bit just gives you that additional peace of mind, so that when you do this, you know that if it ran or something bad happened, you also get feedback. That just additional step will give you that just more confidence in your program. So in this particular video, we've done a few things. Let's just do a quick recap of what we've done. So in this video, we've looked at the process. We looked at let's go to the whiteboard. It'd be easier if we look at it from the whiteboard perspective. Let's go back. So in this particular video, as mentioned, we've done the bridge. We've done the bridge for Java and PowerShell. So Java and PowerShell, there's a bridge now that successfully connects them together. We've also now looked at how we can get the output, okay, the output from PowerShell into Java so it can show it to us. So at this particular moment, we are using the console for Java that comes with the IDE or console line to show us the output. In the next video, we'll take that string output and show it in a GUI interface. Okay, so we've also done this. We've already the runtime. We also done process. We already understand that runtime. Again, if you notice that runtime uses a singleton pattern to return us that particular instance of runtime to make sure there's no confusion there and how we get it. So if you run into problems, do not try to make a new instance of runtime. Just get that particular instance with the command. Okay, with the command get runtime. Okay, get runtime. And the process itself, the process here, we looked at process. Process is the one that has the method to give us the output stream. So don't be confused with output stream. You read it just now and the documentation. The documentation might be a little bit confusing. Get input stream actually gives you the output. Get output stream actually gives you the input. So make sure you read the documentation as well. And we've looked at BufferdReader. Okay, BufferdReader, namely BufferdReader. Reader being the top abstract class, and then BufferdReader and input stream. BufferdReader, the constructor here, will take in the input stream, and input stream will take the output we have from here all the way down here to go into input reader going to BufferdReader then gives us a string, and then that string we use string builder to help us format it. Okay, you can also use a regular string and just append it that way as well. And it's totally up for your preference. We also added a few things to make sure that our program runs and it'll give us feedback if it was successful or not successful. Okay, that is the content of this particular video. So hopefully you find this video useful, and this video gives you a little bit extra information as well, not just the code. It gives you step by step. It's a bit confusing because once you go down that rabbit hole, you don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. So hopefully with my input to this, you get just that additional understanding on not just the code, also how my thought process on how I develop the code and where to find additional information if needed for you to troubleshoot by yourself or for you to change the code to better suit your need. Again, this is the bridge. We've already made the bridge, the connection between Java and PowerShell. The next thing we're going to do is wrap it around, give it a nice graphical user interface for ease of use. I hope to see you in the next video, and I thank you for viewing.